Hey everyone, welcome to this episode of our podcast called Random Cricket Photos That Make My Guests Happy. And before we introduce you to our guest for the day, here is a random cricket photo that makes me happy.
The pitch today looks very good. It's a nice dry wicket.
Magnificent shot, Greg Chappell. Beautiful placement. Jeez.
What about that? Listen to the crowd now. They're into him.
He's not happy. He's not at all happy.
You would not believe that that was possible.
Should be caught. Could be caught. It's
This is a picture of Nasser Hussain celebrating a century at Lord's in 2004 against New Zealand. He's on one knee in the middle of the pitch, punching the air with one hand and letting out a celebratory roar with the bat in the other hand. It makes for a beautiful capture, but what makes it rather special is the fact that this was the first test of the series, and coming into the series, the knives were out for the former English captain, and many wanted to see him go. And then this test match happened, where New Zealand gave a tough target of 282 in the final innings to England. Hussain, along with debutant Andrew Strauss, made light work of the target and helped England to register an impressive 7-wicket win. Nasser Hussain finished the match with a century that could have easily proven to be an answer to his detractors and helped him earn some more time with the team. The former English captain, however, decided this to be his final act on the cricket field and retired right after the Lord's Test. The conditions surrounding this knock and Hussein's valiant response, as well as leaving the game on his own terms after that knock, is what makes this picture a very special one. Now, let's get to our guest for the day and hear about the pictures that make him happy. Joining our long list of cricket lovers who have talked about the romance of cricket and its stories through their favorite photographs on this podcast is Debayan Sen, who is currently the senior assistant editor of ESPN India and, among other things, has also commentated on 20 sports across web, radio, and television in 3 languages. So, thank you, Debayan, for joining us and, well, for ensuring that this episode is going to be particularly pleasant to the ears of our listeners. We've got a commentator amongst us, ladies and gentlemen, someone who loves to talk sports. So, this one promises to be a good one to listen to. So, welcome, Debayan,
Yeah,
on the podcast.
thanks so much for inviting me, Amit, and thanks for the excellent introduction. And yeah, because I'm a commentator and by default a storyteller, so yeah, you can expect this one to slightly be of a longer duration, or probably than some of the other podcasts.
The longer, the better. We are talking about the length of the episode here. So let's begin with a question that I have for you. And of course, when I read 20 sports, 3 mediums, 3 languages, first tell
Yeah.
me, how does one get interested in 20 sports? I mean, that's a massive, massive number. How did you begin following all those sports, and where does cricket feature in that list of sports, if we can call it that?
Yeah, sure. So to begin with, I would point to the fact that I was very fortunate to be born in an age. I was born in '82, so growing up in the late '80s, early '90s, and when I was 5, we moved to a colony which was very very sparsely located, populated rather. So I ended up being the youngest kid being dragged into every sport. So I was 5 and I was playing with people who were maybe in first year of college. I was playing football with them. I was playing cricket with them. Soon we were playing stuff like tennis, badminton. So just being into sport has been something which is natural for me, which is something which I have imbibed from a very young age. Watching sport has also been something that was more of a family activity with my father and my grandfather in particular, and my older brother as well. He was also quite a cricket nut at one stage. And besides that, I think I won't claim to be an expert on these sports. In fact, I think I redid this count recently, and I think I missed out one sport, so it might be 21, because I think I'd forgotten that I'd also done handball. So you approach every sport with a completely fresh, clean slate. You pretend that you don't know anything about it, and that's the key to it. That as soon as you start picking it up, then you understand the nuances of it, and as you do many more games, then you begin to sort of understand some of the intricacies of the sport. But I think everybody would agree that you're a lifelong student of every sport. You can never claim to have understood every bit of it, or even maybe 50% of it.
And coming to cricket, on that list of 21 sports that you have commentated on, how special
Yes.
is that game to you?
Yeah, cricket itself, obviously, for every, I would say probably for about 95 to 97% of every Indian kid, cricket is probably their preferred sport of choice.
By
I
default.
know that, yes, I know that probably later generations have had more of a sort of an attraction towards football also, because that has been as visible or as prominent as cricket once upon a time used to be. When we were growing up, to begin with, there was radio, there was also sports magazines which led with cricket invariably. The newspapers usually led with cricket. And when television picked it up, of course every sport was shown as well, but there was nothing which unified the country as much as cricket did. So cricket was always special to me. And interestingly, my first experience of cricket commentary was when I did television, which was in Hindi. And we did the India Sri Lanka ODI series in 2008. And later that year, I did some matches of the ICL in Hindi, which was good fun. And after that, I've also done international cricket. I've done a lot of matches for the ICC. It's been great fun because, watching associate and affiliate cricket in itself is a great high. And I've also done some international cricket, which was in Bangladesh when they beat New Zealand 3-0 in an ODI series in 2013, and later in the same winter Sri Lanka came and beat them quite comprehensively. And radio has also been an extremely satisfactory medium, because I don't think you can compare the kind of connection that you can make with your audience to what happens on radio. And over the last year and a half, I've been very, very fortunate to also do some text commentary for ESPN Cricinfo, because that in itself is a lot of fun. You have feedback coming in. Sometimes some of them, go over your head. You don't know why you put some of those comments in, but it's just fun to get interactive. And I think it gives a great sense of involvement to those who are following that commentary as well.
Well, I have too many things that I want to talk to you. Of course, who wouldn't with someone who knows 20 sports, 21 sports. But first up, I would start with a rather peculiar question, one that I'm
Sure.
really curious about. So, being someone who has grown up on Cricinfo, grown up reading those articles, seeing those beautiful pictures on the website,
Yeah.
I have this question to you. Like, can you tell a bit about the picture selection and saving process on Cricinfo? And just very curious, thought now that I've got hold of someone from Cricinfo, I would rather ask.
So it's an interesting topic, because I think you'll get different answers from different staffers at Cricinfo. It seems to be something that is not very popular with a lot of people on the editorial desk. I think they won't mind me saying this, that I'm a bit more enthusiastic about pictures, not just on Cricinfo, but also on ESPN India, which is my regular day job. The more variety of pictures, the more interesting captions that one can put. So just to explain, when say two of us are working on a T20 match, for example, say there's a IPL game which is starting off at 4 and it goes on till 7:30 or till 8. So the whole idea is that the shift is split between these two personnel. So one person is commentating, the other person at that same time is also just handling the desk, handling the headline, making sure that everything else is in place. And that person is normally deputed to save pictures. So we get our pictures from a variety of sources. When India plays at home or when the IPL happens, then BCCI has its own source. So those pictures get uploaded pretty quickly. Then you also have wires such as Getty Images, Associated Press, you have AFP, and ESPN also has its own independent sources for pictures for virtually every sport. You have something called EPA, which is the European Press Agency, and things like that. Shutterstock, so many of them. So on a typical day when I am doing a game, I think I have this problem that I tend to save a lot of pictures, and it doesn't matter what match it is. It could be India Australia playing a World Cup final, or it could be say Bangladesh Zimbabwe. It happened recently when Zimbabwe were visiting Bangladesh. And if a match is going on and if I'm on shift, then I'll probably save about 30 to 35 pictures. Simply because I think every picture, even from the same picture or the same action from 3-4 different angles, conveys a very, very different story of its own. And to give you an example, for example, last year when India were playing Australia, when Australia had come for the ODI series ahead of the World Cup, if you remember, Adam Zampa had a very good spell when he used to dismiss Virat Kohli quite often. So you just look at one picture from say 3 agencies, maybe Virat Kohli walking back disappointed, looking at his bat, and in the backdrop, the Australians celebrating and Zampa just pumping his fist. So if you see three pictures differently from different sources, you can isolate three different pictures which can convey different stories. If the focus is on Kohli, then you can take it for a picture which is maybe on Kohli's form, or something about his struggles against Zampa. If you take a picture of just the Australian team huddled together, then it's perfect for a story which is about the Australian team and how they kind of revived themselves midway through that series after going 2-0 down. And if you just take a picture of Zampa, you can use it for anything. You can use it for a graphic, maybe on how Zampa's record against Kohli makes him a standout bowler in that Australian attack. So, yeah, every picture, I mean, the old cliche, a picture is worth 1,000 words. So, why not, when you have the facility to download as many as you can, why wouldn't you want to do that wisely and, use it to the max?
Well, you are one lucky man, I must say. Very interesting process that. So, with cricket for all cricket lovers, it's a bit like that Fort Knox. I just have too many questions. All of us want to know what's inside. But we'll put those questions aside on the back burner for a while and get down to talking cricket photographs, which we have started anyway. So one
Yeah.
peculiar habit of yours when it comes to cricket photographs, I have come to know, is looking at cricket pictures and trying to ascertain the year and the series, something like that.
Yeah.
I think before we begin our list, that's something I would like to hear a bit on.
So it's just a little bit of cricket geekiness. I don't know if it extends to too many other sports, but I think it's just kind of muscle memory, because you've grown up, listening to commentary. You've grown up watching matches. You've grown up kind of thinking about venues and hearing descriptions of venues. And invariably, what used to happen, at least, I mean, I don't think I'm that much in touch with the game, maybe over the last 10 years or so, but at least through the 90s, if you showed me any picture, and we in our cricket for office, we do have a lot of cricket pictures all over the office, blown up and displayed across the walls. So that is basically our wallpaper. And the idea is just looking at them and pretty much taking a guess that, yeah, this has to be, say, Viv Richards from the Oval 1976, or more pertinently, maybe the Indian team, because you also associate every picture with, the Indian logo, whether it used to be the Wills one, or after that Sahara for a long time, then Star for a while, Baiju's now. So you kind of place the era, then with some visual hints. There's always, the crowd at Brisbane, or the sort of embankments at Adelaide and everything, and you can make an educated guess about where this ground would be. So that way you're able to kind of piece it together, and you can link it with every innings that you see in any picture. I don't know, I mean, how many fellow cricket tragics suffer from this disease, but yeah, I used to have that a lot, certainly.
No, it's a bug that affects a lot of cricket lovers. I have been a victim of it too, and yeah, it's just as simple as that. You see a cricket picture, the first question your mind asks is, let's figure out which match is this from, and it's like a quiz to yourself. You really don't need anyone else to ask that question. Your mind asks you.
Correct.
And then you're looking at those little clues: name on the stump, name of the company on the stump, the jersey, the boundary hoardings. And it's such a high when you are able to get it right. So I can
Yes,
totally relate to that feeling of yours. So without much ado, let's begin on our list, which we call random cricket photos that make Debayan Sen happy. So we go from photo 5 to photo 1. Tell us, which picture would you place at number 5, and how does it make you happy, and what special memories you have of it?
Yeah, so first of all, for the benefit of listeners, when this idea was mooted, I think I pretty much gave the response in something like 10 seconds. So it was off pretty much top of the mind recall. So of course, there are millions and zillions of pictures to choose from, but these are the 5 which immediately sprung to mind. So the 5th one, which I actually was considering putting it on 1, but I've eventually decided to place it as the 5th one. This is Kapil Dev with the 1983 Prudential Cup trophy. And the reason for that is simple, because this in many ways is year 0 for not just Indian cricket but world cricket. Of course, there were bigger victories before this. There was 1967, there was 1952, there was 1971, the Twin Triumphs. So many memorable memories, 1976, 1980, 81 in Melbourne. But for all practical purposes, Indian cricket really took off from that moment, the 1983 World Cup win. And Kapil Dev was pretty much the embodiment of that entire triumph. Of course, it was a very good collective effort. Roger Binney with his wickets, Mohinder Amarnath with his performances, um, useful innings from time to time from everybody. Yashpal Sharma, Sandeep Patil, Shrikant in the final. Gavaskar was excellent with his fielding in particular. So many performances which also contributed. But by far, Kapil Dev and his 175, which I know, I'm sure a lot of your guests on the podcast will also be referring to. And Kapil Dev with that catch in the final, which really turned the tide. And also, I think a very underrated bit of man management, wherein when you speak to all these players who were part of the 1983 World Cup team, they talk about the chat at the break when India had been bowled out for 183. And really, I mean, 99 times out of 100 against that West Indies team, India posting 183 in 60 overs, I mean, the chances of winning would be extremely slim, if not, completely nil. But all that Kapil really said was, we've still put a score on the board and let's fight it out there and let's make them work hard for every run. And that's a great lesson in how good and how extremely inspirational as a captain Kapil was. Of course, he was one of those who led from the front, and we have this almost mythical legend in our minds about Imran Khan, the captain, which is pretty rightfully deserved. But I think Kapil Dev, let's not forget, he was also a very young man when he won the 1983 World Cup. He was similar to Imran Khan in being an all-rounder. He had similar challenges in playing alongside a lot of senior players around him, some of whom had already been captain before him. And he just motivated this team to get to a different stage altogether. And yeah, I mean, let's be honest, without that victory, Indian cricket wouldn't have been the same. The commerce of cricket wouldn't have been the same. And who knows, we wouldn't have had this podcast probably.
The number of people who have talked about this photograph or this tournament, I think it's only fair that I reserve a place for this photo in the list already. But jokes aside, it just goes on to show what an important day it was for Indian cricket. And to add to it, one thing that surprises me is that we have won 2 more World Cups, one World T20 crown and the 50 over World Cup. But when it comes to top 5 photos and talking about a World Cup win, this is the one that everyone has chosen to talk about. Possibly because, the memories of the other 2 world titles are still too fresh in our heads. Who knows? But
Yeah.
it's just
Also, I
fascinating.
think, I think a reason for that is that most of the people you're speaking to are, beyond a certain age. So if you were to go to, say, fans who are maybe 25 to 30 or even younger, then in all likelihood, I think 2011 would hold a much more iconic status in their mind, I'm sure. I think it might just be a generational thing, but yes, I mean, I myself was only 1 at the time, so I don't have any memories personally of the 1983 win. But just as somebody who has sort of seen the economy of cricket boom so much, first as a fan and then as somebody who's worked in this industry, I think we owe a lot of gratitude to the 1983 win. I can tell you a nice little anecdote about this triumph and its correlation. So when Z Sports launched in 2005, one of the first series that we had covered was the, if you remember, the Afro-Asian series.
Yes.
This was the one in 2005. So that was
The
held in
one
South
that
Africa.
marked Dale Steen's debut.
Yes, absolutely. So we had Z Sports had the broadcast rights for it, and Kapil Dev was one of the guests. And I think Arjuna Ranatunga was also brought in as a guest. And yeah, we had a pretty star-studded guest lineup. So one of the first things which struck Kapil as soon as he walked into the Z Sports studios was that there was a picture of him holding aloft the 1983 World Cup, this picture. And his immediate quip was that, I mean, he spoke in Hindi, but I'll just translate it in English. So he said that thank God that Sourav didn't win the toss and bat first. Otherwise, this picture wouldn't have been there. So he was referring to the 2003 final.
Yeah. That decision that haunts a lot of us, that day that haunts a lot of us, but takes nothing away from the wonderful achievement of Kapil Dev. All right, moving on to picture number 4 on the list. What is that?
Yeah, so the picture number 4 is Rahul Dravid playing a cut through the offside, which is from the 2002 series. And as you can see from the visual clues, this is the oval. And of course, NPAR gives you an idea about the era as well. It's 2002. And Alex Stewart behind the wicket is just watching in admiration. Dravid looks slightly unbalanced in the sense his left foot is raised, because typically he would look extremely balanced when he was playing his strokes through the offside. But this is again close to that 2003 era, so pretty much the peak, I think, of Rahul Dravid's batsmanship, and something which marked out why Sourav Ganguly's team around that era had so much of success, especially abroad. Between 2001 and 2004, I think this was such a superb brand of batsmanship which came from the Indians, and particularly from Rahul Dravid. I think he was at the fulcrum of it. There were so many great players around him as well. Virender Sehwag had come into his own by this time. This series was the one where he opened for the first time. And yeah, I mean, everybody was pulling their weight, but Dravid was just batting on a different zone. I think he got 217 in that match. And he had preceded that with centuries at Headingley, that famous first day effort with Sanjay Bangar. Before that, match-saving Test match 100 in Trent Bridge, and he carried that form through to India when they came, and they played next against West Indies, I think, in Mumbai, if memory serves me right, in the first match. But yeah, absolutely fabulous batsman, and pretty much one of the all-time greats. And of course, we all talk about Sourav Ganguly being God on the offside, but Rahul Dravid was also a very, very good player through the offside. Little bit of wit, anything which was slightly lagging in either line or length, and he would punish it so well. And the funny thing about him was that sometimes he looked a little inelegant because he used to put in so much of effort into everything. Like, you could see there was no economy of effort. It was probably exact opposite of somebody like a Mohammad Azharuddin or a VVS Lakshman, who would just effortlessly spank the ball away and not look like they've broken a sweat. But that was the beauty of Dravid's batsmanship, which was worth appreciating. That even in something which was maybe a stonewalling innings, you could see that he was putting in 100% out there, and just that man was just addicted to batting, wasn't he?
Completely will agree with that. And yeah, Dravid hitting on the offside, it always made for absolute viewing pleasure. And I've gone through a lot of Rahul Dravid photographs throughout the span of his career, and so many of them are of Dravid playing a square cut. You know,
Yeah.
it seems to tell me that probably, I'm just drawing a conjecture here, that Dravid's entry to the crease was sort of a cue to photographers that something special might be on your way if you're capturing him from the offside, from the point region. So many of these beautiful photographs I've seen, and they're all of him cutting and, as you said, putting all his effort into that shot. But yeah, as
Yeah,
you
I
said,
think around this time, if I'm not mistaken, around this time, I remember reading an article. Just look it up. Maybe it'll be there somewhere in the archives. I think probably in Wisden Asia Cricket, the magazine which used to come out. It was by an American lady who had taken to painting. I mean, she had no idea about cricket, but she had taken to painting about cricket simply based on a picture of a Rahul Dravid square cut. So to her mind, that this exhibited the best of balance which is required. She found it very, ballet, how good it was, and how precise the movements had to be, how every sort of muscle looked like it was absolutely geared towards playing that stroke. So that I think reveals the impact that this particular shot from Dravid used to
well, she completely cracked understanding cricket, didn't she, with that
have.
photograph? So now two photographs done. What is third on the list?
So third is another one which for a brief while, I was tinkering with the idea of putting it up at number one. But yeah, it's unique in its own way. This is from the 2005 Ashes. It's the end of the Edgbaston Test match where England have just about nicked a 2-run win against Australia. And after that, there's Andrew Flintoff down on his haunches. There's Brett Lee just in front of him, and the two of them are just sort of commiserating, or rather Flintoff is commiserating with Lee. And to me, this is a very special picture because it conveys what the sport is all about, irrespective of what level you play at. You could be playing the Ashes, or you could be playing in your gully, or you could be playing with your neighbor's kid or something. But yeah, I mean, you play hard, you play to win, you try to win at all costs within the extent of the rules. But once it's done, you are basically two human beings. And I also like these two cricketers really, because in this, at least maybe the last 20 years or so, nobody has typified as much commitment to the cause, because you take them across any format, whether test or ODIs or T20s, just put them in the middle of a battle with either bat or ball or in the field, and you know that they'll give 100%. I think one more name which comes to mind is somebody like Anil Kumble, who would, just never let you down. So these are the kind of cricketers that, as captain, you would give an arm and a leg to have in your team. And that's how it turned out in this series as well. It's quite interesting that on ESPN Cricinfo a couple of days ago, we had a video which had McGrath being asked that if you hadn't, turned your ankle over at Edgbaston, what do you reckon the Ashes scoreline would have been? And I think he was quite serious when he said 5-0. And who's to say
That's
maybe that would
McGrath
have turned
saying
out.
every time before every Ashes.
Yeah, but the funny part is that he used to back it up. And I mean, his team, of course, it
That's
always
true.
helps to have a really good team alongside you. But who's to say how it might have turned out? And when you think about this moment itself, how close did Australia come? And Kasparovich probably got out to the kind of ball that he would have maybe on another day, flicked away for 4 or something of that sort. Or maybe it would have just taken his thigh pad and flown off for 4 runs or something. So anything could have happened. The series could have turned out differently, but my word, what an Ashes series and what a test match we had thanks to this moment. And I think this is the spirit of sportsmanship. I think it won a few awards as well, and I won't be surprised. I mean, it's hardly surprising that this is considered one of the most sporting moments in cricket history.
Iconic in every way. Iconic in the test that it was the last moment of. Iconic in the number of in the cricketers that it had. And talking about Brett Lee and Andrew Flintoff, what brilliant entertainers of the game. And both have so many glorious photographs. Brett Lee has won so many World Cups. Andrew Flintoff, of course, he could produce magic out of thin air. And even the celebrations of both the cricketers are so photogenic. But if you ask any cricket lover to talk about one iconic photo that involved either Brett Lee or Andrew Flintoff, 9 out of 10 times they would point to this photograph. And that just tells how wonderful this one is. Now the penultimate photo, fourth photo, what would that be?
Yes, judging by the content that you mostly put up, especially on Twitter, I think this one is going to make you quite happy. This is a picture of Sachin Tendulkar, all of, I think, less than 18, so he would have been 17 still, or I think 18, going on 19. This is from the Perth Test match in 1992, the 5th Test match of the series, where India lost 4-0 to Australia, a very good Australian team. And he's somewhat slightly up on his tippy toes, and he's just driving, I think, through the extra cover region. And I remember that Australia was a very dominant team during the series. So my memories of this series are twofold. One is that, of course, as I mentioned, my grandfather and my father both were really into cricket. And my grandfather used to sort of both make me study, and he used to also make me watch or follow cricket. And I went to a school which, thankfully, till the 6th standard, I mean, in 6th, we started having exams. So before that, we never had to bother about exams. And I always found it funny, friends used to talk about revising and preparing and half yearlies and everything. We never had that botheration because we had continuous evaluation through the year. So this was sometime in 5th, close to the winter vacation, when this series pretty much began. And we used to live in a house. I mean, my parents still live there, where we wouldn't get a lot of sunlight because there was a sort of a Japanese embassy school which had taken up the area just beside our house. So that's where the sunlight used to come in from, which completely got blocked off. So in Delhi winters, there's nothing like sitting out in the sun. So my grandparents, who are no longer with us, both of them used to like take this little cot, and we used to set up alongside the road and just sit. And the two of them would just chill. They'd be reading a book or something, or just whatever, peeling vegetables or something. And we'd keep a radio on, and we'd be listening to the cricket, and I would be doing some math sums or working on my holiday homework. And that's how I remember listening to this particular innings as well. And then every evening, Doordarshan also used to show these, I think, half-an-hour clips, which were basically shortened highlights. And my dad himself had been a sort of a half-decent club-level cricketer. When he used to work for Engineers India Limited, I think he used to play for their corporate team. And this was in the early 70s. He often tells the story. I think I can share it here because he's usually quite happy to share it himself. So I don't think there's any privacy violation here. So he once chickened out of a match because Madan Lal was in the opposition team. So this was not the Madan Lal that we have come to know of from footage of the 1983 World Cup. This is Madan Lal 10 years before that, or maybe 12 years before that, when he was a young tearaway quick, and he used to really bowl fast. At least my dad says so. So he just, I mean, he thought that he didn't stand a chance, so he just stood down. He said that no, I'd rather be in office that day. So my father, when he saw this innings, one of the things that he mentioned was that just watch how well Tendulkar deals with short pitched balls, because the sign of a class player is when he's able to drive on the up off the back foot. And it still sticks in my mind. And when you see videos of this match, you will notice that this is something which stood him in such great stead, because the Australians went in with a four-pronged pace attack. They had Mike Whitney supporting Craig McDermott, Merv Hughes, and they also had Paul Rifle making his debut. And Mark Waugh also used to bowl seam up those days, and they also had Steve Waugh. So they could come in with medium paces all day long, all of them extracting a little bit of extra bounce from the Wacker surface. And then you had the Fremantle doctor, making sure that there was a little bit of swing late in the day. But this little guy was completely unfazed by everything. Everybody else, people with twice his age, 3 times or 4 times his experience were falling all around him. And he was just picking balls perfectly on length and just driving them straight down the ground, cutting them as well, horizontal bat shots. But particularly what stands out are some of those drives when he, used the full extent of his height, however much he could generate, went back and then just punched it on the up and just got it through the covers. It was just delightful batting. And of course, I mean, it's hard to pick one, great moment for somebody who has such a repertoire of top innings. But I think a lot of people who have seen Sachin through the years point to this as one of his greatest innings. And I think I personally agree as well, having followed most of his career. I think this was the moment for me where the penny dropped that, oh my God, this guy is definitely going to be one of the greats of the game.
The arrival of Sachin Tendulkar in the real sense of the word, Perth, Australian pace attack, and so much of promise. Thank God he lived up to all of that promise. And yeah, to put 1 century over 99 others, I think it's quite a challenging task. But given the man's age, the performance of his teammates, the conditions, the opposition, I see absolutely no reason why it should not be there. So great choice of photograph as well as the Sachin century. I don't think I would be able to say too much when it comes to Sachin Tendulkar. So we'll quickly move to the final photograph. Which one is that?
Yeah, so the final photograph is the moment that the Kolkata Test of 2001 was won. This is a picture where in one frame you can see Agra, the disappointment writ large on his face because the finger has gone up from SK Bansal, and Sourav Ganguly is basically like jumping straight into Harbhajan Singh's arms. Harbhajan Singh has just completed what must be considered one of the greatest Indian Test victories of all time, if not the best. And you can actually visualize and you can literally hear the crowd coming to life at the Eden Gardens. And it's funny, this is one match which, irrespective of what age you listen to or you come across any Indian cricket fan of, I think they will point to this as the greatest test match that they've ever witnessed, because this just had so many twists and turns and just the backdrop of everything, the all conquering Australians coming into the Indian soil, winning the first test match so comfortably, but even in that little, sparks from the Indians. And to do this one in particular on the back of those 2 incredible innings from VVS Lakshman and Rahul Dravid, which to begin with gave them a chance. And then just this fascinating final day. And my own personal memory of it is that this was second year. I had I was in chemistry honors, but we had physics as a main subject for the first 2 years. So there was a physics practical that day. Got over with the exam, and then in the evening there was the graduation dinner, which is like a sort of a formal farewell. So all students turn up, and you have to suit up and everything. And I used to live quite far from my college. My college was in North Campus. I lived in South Delhi. So got done with the practicals, then went to the common room, saw a little bit of the chase, but Australia looked like they were quite comfortable, so didn't find much motivation or much point in hanging around. Set off on a couple of changes of bus ride, and I remember the last 20 minutes or half an hour of the bus ride, and there was a gentleman who was listening to radio on the way, and he kept just updating us about every wicket falling, and I honestly thought he was taking the piss, because it just sounded unreal that Australia were losing wickets And probably this and Adelaide in 2003 are two test matches where Australia, if they had any sort of a different DNA, if you think back, they could have probably saved those test matches, but they just didn't have that in their mind under Steve Waugh. They just wanted to keep going for the win. And I remember getting back in time at home to watch either the last two or the last three wickets, and this moment, and the visuals still stick in my mind. There was one replay which showed the cops with so much of concentration writ large on their face. You initially think they're actually doing their job, but then you realize they were only following the cricket because they go up in a whoop as well as soon as the finger goes up. And if you look at the replay, then McGrath was probably a touch unlucky, but I think SK Bansal himself also wanted to be a little bit part of that history. But yeah, I mean, Harbhajan Singh, the way he was bowling, he sooner or later would have had one ball with the number of the batsmen on it. So massive, massive win. And in many ways, something which really shaped Indian cricket going forward. Perhaps not as huge as 1983, but definitely in terms of where modern cricket of India has landed up, this was a massive turning point as well.
Beautiful. And SK Bansal was one generous man, and we definitely owe him a lot. But what a kind stranger you had on the bus, and it is a pity that you chose not to believe him. But and a young Sourav Ganguly hugging the hero of the match, Harbhajan Singh, for pretty much saving his captaincy career. I would say don't know what would have happened had India gone on to lose that Test series. And that Test match ushered in an era that would come to be identified his brand of captaincy. So special in every way. And there are those matches whose photos, when you see, you envy each and every person sitting in the crowds. And this definitely is one such photograph. Just to imagine anyone being there, the tension, the joy, it must have been one incredible experience.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, doesn't get any better than Test cricket at Eden Gardens. And I mean, interestingly, in my list, you'll find only one non-Test pick, and even that is of a captain picking up a trophy. So maybe a little bit of bias there, but I must say, I do treat all formats alike. In fact, in many ways, I've come to sort of grudgingly respect and like T20 a lot more than I initially did. But I think there's nothing to beat Test cricket still. I think it's got to be the best in terms of all the opportunities that it provides to everybody involved with it. And just the fact that you can, it gives you a second chance. You can flop in your first innings and you can come back and be a hero in the second.
So there is a shot at redemption available there. So, one thing that we do with our guest is, after the list is over, and of course, this was one fascinating, thoroughly enjoyable list. But after this, I have to ask you something, which is, you've covered a lot of cricket, you've commentated on a lot of cricket. And one kind of cricket that you've covered a lot is the physically disabled cricket, something whose, photographs are not readily available, no footage exists. So, I would like you to talk a bit on that.
Yeah, sure. So this was sometime in March 2014. I think I just, in trying to get back in touch with some of the things which I had done, I looked this up, and it is there on YouTube. So it's quite a fascinating watch because England were playing Pakistan. This was at the ICC Academy grounds in Dubai, and I went at the behest of a friend, Azhar Habib, who was producing that. He was also used to produce a lot of stuff for ICC around the time, so we did a lot of work together. And they were playing 3 T20s across 2 days. So there was one in the morning, one in the evening, and one the next sort of afternoon. And then I was just sort of headed off straight to the airport from the ground itself. And it was quite fascinating to just go and meet some of these players, have a chat with them. So this is very distinct from blind cricket, because blindness is not considered one of the physical disabilities here. So here you have players who have either limbs missing or not fully functional, or who have artificial parts which have been put in, or even cerebral palsy for that matter, for a couple of players. And for the Pakistan team, the most common affliction was polio. A lot of their players had, been ravaged by polio, but not in the sense of B.S. Chandrasekhar. It had been a lot more physical and visible damage. The England team was very professional. They had a massive, contingent of about, I think, 8 or 10 support staff. they have a dedicated physical disability cricket wing of the ECB as well. So that helps. That there's substantial funds which are also released to that. And Pakistan was, I mean, I hate to sound a little stereotypical, but Pakistan was just being Pakistan. They had probably like 2 or 3 people, and one of them was sort of doubling up as one of the guest commentators. And for some reason, he kept saying that one day, he kept telling me that one day you'll be doing things on 10 Sports. And I had to keep telling him that, no, I've actually worked with Z, which was the owner of 10 Sports. So I have done stuff on 10 Sports already. And yeah, there were some fascinating human interest stories. The Pakistan team, the captain was this major from the Pakistan army called Hussain Alam. And he had actually lost part of his foot during a mine explosion during the Kargil war. And fabulous cricketer. He had actually played at some pretty decent levels. And I was just thinking that if he and I had met in any other context, it would have been very awkward, with him being a Pakistani, me being an Indian, and the only connect, in a sense, being, the Kargil war. But because we were on a cricket field, we were talking about cricket, and I learned a little bit about, more about what he does, what his aims and goals are. And he played a couple of fabulous innings. And I remember that by the second day, he was quite badly cramping, because obviously one limb of his was, one leg of his rather was artificial. So there was some muscular spasms which were coming in the top half of his torso. And then it was actually the England physio who was helping him out with a massage and with other stuff as well. And his opening partner was this left-hander called Matlub Qureshi, and he had only one limb. He just batted with his left hand. So just imagine the kind of strength he must have had in his shoulder and his forearms, because he was very wristy. He was very, Saeed Anwar-esque in the way that he would play his strokes. And to do that with just one arm, and to be able to will the ball to go through covers and through, the mid-wicket region, just depending on a little bit of wrist work, you can imagine what kind of strength he must have had. And good players all around, and fascinating series, close contests. I think Pakistan won the series 2-1, if memory serves me right. But England had some good players as well. They had an opener called Alex Hammond, tall, broad-shouldered, big hitting guy. I think his disability was also related to his leg, but he used to just like smack them out for 6 randomly. And yeah, I mean, it was good to see human endeavor. The Pakistan players, some of them, when they would go chasing after the ball, you could actually see that their leg had come off because it was an artificial leg. Then some teammate would go along, help him up, throw the ball, and then help him put the leg back on. So it was just eye-opening, and just revealed that cricket is beyond so many boundaries. I mean, it's of course beyond national boundaries, which we always talk about. But this is also about just the passion for the sport, and that doesn't know any barriers, even of physical ability.
The triumph of human will, if we put it that way. Beautiful stories there. Moving on to the final part, where we talk about, the one that got away. So I would ask you about a moment in cricket that you have been following for so many years, that you have witnessed, but we do not have
Yeah.
photographic memory of. Which moment would that be? Which day would that be?
So if I can pick 2 here, because again, one is something which I saw as a fan, and one is something which I saw as a broadcaster. So
Sure.
going back to the fan bit, going back to the fan bit, I think you will find the odd picture, but I don't think there's enough of photographic evidence, or more precisely, there isn't any footage that I've ever found of the 1991 Ranji Trophy final. I think there are some Hindu pictures which I've seen from time to time, because many publications, including Cricinfo, have written about this match as well. This was the game where Haryana took on Bombay, as it was then. Star-studded Bombay lineup. Pretty decent Haryana team as well, when you consider Kapil Dev, Chetan Sharma, Amarjeet KP, Ajay Jadeja, all of them playing for them. Bombay had a young Vinod Kambli, a young Sachin Tendulkar, Dilip Vengsarkar, Ravi Shastri, I'm pretty sure, was there, Lalchand Rajput, Abhi Kuruvilla. So many stalwarts, and really good first-class match, almost reminiscent of the way that this Kolkata test, or the Edgbaston test more precisely, turned out, because I think on the last day, Mumbai needed something like 352. That was their target, or 355, sorry, was their target. I think they fell for 352. And Vengsarkar played a valiant hand. There was good support as well. There was a good swashbuckling cameo from Sachin as well. And this came on Doordarshan, and I remember watching, bits and pieces of that final day. And just watching Wengsarkar get out towards the end, or rather, I think his partner was probably run out towards the end. And he walked back and he broke down. He was in tears. And this still remains, I think, Haryana's only Ranji Trophy victory. And if you ask any Indian cricketer, even now, I think the kind of attention or the kind of pride they associate with the Ranji Trophy is something to be believed. And it just tells you that these guys, they aren't really mercenaries or anything. They may want a good paycheck and stuff, but at the end of the day, they are very rooted to what has brought them into the spotlight in the first place, and that is playing for their states and their respective organizations which have helped them build a career. And yeah, the Ranji Trophy is just something which probably has never got its due. And maybe through your podcast, we can request the Information and Broadcasting Ministry, if they can, please show the 1991 Ranji Trophy final on Doordarshan now that they are on a retro trip.
Yeah, totally. One of the best matches that I have, heard about, read about, but it's a pity that we really don't have much to remember anything from. No photo, no footage. And it is just the perfect time to revisit a classic, as you say. So moving on, what is the second that you were going to talk about?
Yes. So as broadcaster, I think the most amazing innings, and you would be hard pressed to find, I mean, you might find footage, but you'll probably not find any pictures. And I don't think the pictures will anyway do justice. So this was, I think the date was February 18th, 2015. And why I remember the date, I'll come to later. I did a couple of seasons of the Celebrity Cricket League as well. So that was a fun experience in itself, coming up against so many superstars and doing the studio, doing toss, doing presentation, in Kochi with Mohanlal by your side. Probably the only man who can outstrip somebody like Sachin Tendulkar for cheers at the Jawaharlal Nehru Stadium in Kochi. This was a match at the Chinnaswamy in 2015. I live now in Bangalore, but I used to be based in Delhi then. So I remember sort of flying in, and I actually did one I-League game the day before that. And then I was doing this particular match. So it might have been either January or February then, maybe January. And the match was Karnataka Bulldozers, and they were playing the Bengal Tigers. I think it was a double bill, so this was the second match of the day. And Karnataka were batting first, and they were at about 90 odd for 2 or something, 90 for 3, maybe around the 10th over mark, 11th over actually, when this player called Rajiv came out to bat. And he just blitzed the Bengal Tigers bowling to all corners. And interestingly, most of the hitting he did was straight in a V. And he wasn't just clearing it, he was sending it deep into the rows. He sent a few balls maybe onto the roof as well of the ground. And he wound up with 111 not out of 33 balls. I think he got to his 100 of his 30th ball that he faced. And he took Karnataka to 255. And if you think about it, this is actually a more difficult task, because the semi-professional or completely unprofessional bowlers don't really generate any pace. So you don't have anything to work with. You've got to generate all your pace with your own bat swing. You've got to be very precise in the way that you go about your shot making. And he was absolutely sublime that day. And why I remember the date so precisely, or maybe like close and thereabouts, is because on our commentary panel, I remember, I think that day we had Amol Mazumdar, we had Devang Gandhi, and in all likelihood, I think we had Atul Vasan. I'm not sure if Rohan Gavaskar was also there or not. But one of them was also keeping track of another ODI which was happening the same day, which was between South Africa and West Indies. And he told us that AB de Villiers had scored a century of 30 odd balls. So that's exactly the same time, at two different parts, two different continents, there were two amazing innings which were happening. But of course, the de Villiers innings is the one which has the spotlight. But I can proudly say that I was witness to another unique effort the same day, which was probably of similar proportions. Who knows? If he had 50 overs to bat, maybe he would have scored 300.
No, that's some real coincidence there, and well, just got overshadowed a bit by AB de Villiers' Herculean effort. But what a knock! I mean, yeah, it would be great to have some sort of footage from that as well, and to see a record being made on the same day that saw AB de Villiers do something incredible against the West Indian bowling attack. That was one innings I mean I had not ever heard of, but now my curiosity has peaked, and I'm going to search YouTube and wherever I can to find out if it exists somewhere, the footage of it.
There's a good chance you might find it on YouTube, actually.
Great. So, well, we have to take the bails off finally from this podcast as we come to the end of this wonderful episode. A big thank you to you, Debayan. It was incredibly special talking, cricket and photographs to you.
Thanks. Lovely talking to you.
And with that, we come to the end of yet another really interesting and really fun episode. All thanks to Debayan Sen, who gave us so many stories, personal stories, and stories of kinds of cricket that we haven't really been fortunate to see. So, a big thanks to you, Debayanda. Now, coming to the question for this week, my question to you is, since Debayanda talked about the 2001 series India Australia Kolkata Test match, where one of the heroes was Harbhajan Singh, who went on to take 32 wickets in that Test series. You have to tell me, in the list of highest wicket takers, after Harbhajan Singh, which Indian's name features next? After Harbhajan Singh, there are a number of Australian cricketers, and then there is an Indian entry. You have to tell me who is this Indian who took the most number of wickets in that series after Harbhajan Singh's tally of 32 wickets. While you ponder about the answer to that question, we will be posting a lot of interesting stuff on all our social media accounts on Instagram, Facebook, as well as on Twitter. Do follow us there, do like this episode and share it with your friends if you like it enough. We'll be back with yet another guest soon. Till then, stay happy, love cricket.